Fantastic. Call to order, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Pembroke School Committee meeting Tuesday, March 31st, 2026. Here at 6 o'clock. If you have questions, they can be sent to scinfo@pembroke12.org. We monitor the box around the clock here. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
There's some feedback.
Yeah, we got some feedback. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Public comment, we're going to start with that right off the bat. There's some people that want to speak, I believe, or would you rather wait till we get into the discussion of the MIA correspondence?
Well, I think it would come before that.
It's public comment, they can go now. Yep.
So if you'd like to do it now, is it you're here to speak about? Come on up. Realize you're talking into that. Please be as clear as you can, and it's kind of for the audience at home. If you just tell us your name and your address, that would be great. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you again. Today, I'm here again appearing for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, you just need your name and address. I'm not sure.
Chrissy Nelson. I'm at Birch Street.
Thank you.
So, I appear before you today not out of emotion or ideology, but with a clear evidence-based call to protect the integrity of girls and women athletics under the very laws and policies designed to guarantee it. In 1972, our U.S. courts created Title IX, and its original purpose was protecting biological women in sports. Since I saw you all last, the most elite of all athletic competitions, the Olympics, has supported this exact issue and has changed its policies. As I have handed you on the second and third pages, the protection of the female category was found to be most important to female athletes. The reasons that we should not be allowing boys and girls sports and spaces is fair competition. It's biological advantage, and it's proven from reputable science. It is not fear, it is fact. Protecting the majority of our population, girls and women, and women's rights, and preventing future destruction of girls' high school sports. Females are 50% of our population. Protecting the promise for elite female athletes, and I'm talking about the athletes in your life that show incredible promise and talent, that are winning or close to winning in their sport. Everyone has the right to exercise, to play, to be involved in a sport. I handed you a list of all the schools of girls that were affected by one boy that competed in that girls' track meet we talked about back in January, this winter indoor track season. Over 50 schools are listed on that first page that you have in front of you that were affected. This is not just affecting Pembroke, it's affecting our entire state, and many girls within each school as well. I am a mother, I have a female teenager, and I have a young elementary school female daughter as well. I want to make sure that my youngest doesn't have to experience what my oldest is going through today. I want to support my neighbors and every young girl. I am a neighbor to you all, and I truly care, and I want the best for our neighbors. Let's talk about the public comments that were made on February 3rd, and let's be crystal clear. Firstly, the man, Simon, and the woman, Claire, who came to speak from their own free will, they were never told, and they were never paid to come and speak. That is fact. Their personal experience of pain and suffering is something that we cannot ignore. They urged you all to strongly consider the highly negative impact that being told they were the opposite sex and then transitioning had on their life. They told you their experiences in sports, and they urged you to contact the MIA and to update town language as I am again today. We then heard testimony about concern for all transgender students. When my discussion here is purely on the female half of the population of students being affected by boys only, we must be diligent in what information we are getting our information from. For instance, sources of research we analyze must have a thorough literature review and be present with high-quality data. When an outdated research article using a population sample is in the incorrect demographic referred to, we cannot use that summary as fact. We must review all current data. This is a well-researched topic, and there are reputable sources from all over the world on this very topic that support not allowing boys in girls' sports. For example, the Journal of Applied Physiology in 2024 and 25, Clinical Endocrinology, Endocrine Reviews, Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise from 2023, Sports Medicine, the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, the Journal of American College of Sports Medicine, the British Journal of Sports Medicine, the University of Illinois, the Marquette University, Women's Sports Foundation, and so much more. Once we look at all of the data, we can all know for a fact there is a biological advantage for boys competing in girls' sports. Let me be clear, it is not a fear of biological advantage. It is fact, and it is proven time and time again for many years through many research articles. As for the subtopic of inclusion, every biological boy has a place on boys' teams and in boys' spaces. Every biological girl has a place on girls' teams and girls' spaces. Anyone can join intramural teams, and co-ed is already in place and a great option for many athletes. You wouldn't be excluding anyone by petitioning the MIA or ensuring the proper language is in place in Pembroke. You would be supporting it. Remember, by continuing what's happening now, allowing boys to compete with girls on girls' teams, the unfairness is in the allowing competition times to count against girls. If the boys' times counted for his own boy category, then no medals will be lost, no finals not run, no girl stripped of her opportunities for college recruitment and scholarships, the NCAA for college sports, and now the Olympics for the most elite athletes in the world will not lose those female athletes that should have been there, but whose athletic course could have been severely skewed when their fair competitions could be stolen from them, which is what's happening in Massachusetts right now under current policy. Hence, we need to contact them. And how exciting it would be for every athlete to have a fair chance and a fair competition. You could do that for our female athletes in Pembroke. Be the start of making competition fair. And thank you again for all your time and your thoughtful consideration. Our whole town thanks you and is counting on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cora?
Hi, my name is Cora Pongratz. I live on Lake Street. I'm a junior at Pembroke High School, and I'm, as of right now, the first and only woman to compete on Pembroke High School's co-ed wrestling team. Because of that, I kind of have an interesting perspective on this topic that I'd like to share and add some of my experiences. First of all, in my time wrestling, I've wrestled at 4 different weight classes on both varsity and junior varsity against both boys and girls. During this time, I've won to boys and lost to boys and won to girls and lost to girls, but there has been a big discrepancy among those numbers, as I have found that it's such a large biological gap that even though there can be a gap in skill and knowledge in these sports, sometimes that isn't. Even if you put 2 people together who have the same skills, the biological gap is still evident, and that shows in my numbers as far as who I have wrestled and their biological genders. So I just like to put it out there that the biological gap is very real, and I experience that. I'd also like to touch on that, like Chrissy Nelson has stated, this isn't just about this isn't really an issue of politics. It's about protecting women, and it's about protecting everyone, and that means protecting opportunities. And I want to talk a lot about the idea of trans women competing on men's sports teams, because as a woman on a sports team of all men, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about that, and I think that a lot of trans women could be competing with their biological gender in a fair competition while also being safe and understood. And I think that that's a really good alternative for this issue, is that instead of posing the opportunity to injure or take opportunities or medals or scholarships away from biological women, they can instead compete with their biological gender and have separate locker rooms and still remain their respect and dignity as a player for their sport. And so that all people can kind of get an opportunity to do this safely, because that is really what all of us want. And yeah, I just want to say on my experiences being on a men's sports team, I haven't faced any disrespect from the men. It's been really welcoming. And I think that trans women, if they were competing with their biological gender, they would find the same. And it would fix a lot of the issues that we're having with this. And thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you. Nice job. Chrissy, can I ask one question? Are you not at the mic? The two women, the people that spoke that you mentioned, are they Pembroke residents? Do they live here? You mentioned two people that spoke at the last meeting.
The two detransitioners?
So Simon and Claire were two folks that I never met before. They were strangers.
Yeah,
And they were detransitioners is how they call themselves.
right, but they didn't identify, they said they didn't want to give their address for some various reason. And I was wondering if they were from Pembroke. That was the question.
I have no clue who they are or where they come from. I don't know anything about them.
Yet you said you know they weren't paid to speak.
They weren't paid from anyone that we know.
Oh, okay, well, but again, respectfully, you're making a statement saying they weren't paid to speak by anyone you know. I don't know anyone either, but I'm just trying to figure out, again, just trying to level the playing field here.
The very next day, I had called out.
Come to Mike.
You have to.
Yeah, so I'm sorry.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
the very next day, I actually reached out and I contacted anybody that could have been fingers pointed to. And I called the Massachusetts Family Institute and I asked them point blank. And I said, did you know that these two folks were coming? And they said no. And I said, did you give them any sort of funding or pay them in any sort of way? And they said, no, we did not. We had no idea they were coming and they came of their own free will.
Right, but again, my question being is, if, I say this respectfully, if they're not from
Yeah.
Pembroke, I don't want to hear from people outside of Pembroke. I want to hear from people within Pembroke. If I wanted comment from other people, we would have a free-for-all, it'd be 10,000 people here.
Understood.
So I'm
Yeah.
hoping if they were from Pembroke, they should have told us their address, and if they didn't, I feel they misrepresented them. And I'm not taking a stand on the position either way. I just have a problem with someone getting up to the mic. There was a gentleman from Kingston, I wouldn't let speak. There was a woman from Kingston, I wouldn't let speak. If these people aren't from Pembroke, I'm disappointed that to get their point across, they didn't tell us who they were, respectfully.
Agreed.
Paige, I think you have a question, if you want to grab the mic.
Hi, Paige Graziano from Lake Street. I know from personal experience, and I don't want to say names because these people specifically don't want to come speak here, because when these issues are brought up, there is significant community bullying that goes on, calling people TERFs, saying that people don't raise their children right. But I know personally people who have detransitioned, and this is not about keeping people out of sports. It's about making things fair. And so unfortunately, when you have an issue that's this inflammatory, people locally are afraid to speak out because they have felt not only oppression of people, oppression from people who, when they were transitioned and living as an opposite sex, they felt pressure from one side that they were doing something wrong. And now that they've detransitioned and are living a life that they are comfortable with, they are getting pressure from the other side. And it's very, very intense pressure. We'd like to see that these kids can just live their lives and be treated as human beings. but we also want sport to be fair. So I understand your concern, and the rule was that only Pembroke people were supposed to speak. We had no control over them not being honest.
Right. I'm not saying you did, excuse me, not to interrupt. My question, I'm not here to kind of debate the detransitioning and the whole thing, and people don't want to come out, I get
Yep,
it.
yep.
These people came forward, and my question is, if they misrepresented themselves, I have a problem with that. I don't know about the rest
Yeah,
of the committee.
so do I.
I have a problem with it,
So do I.
so.
Hi, Eileen Flashman, School Street. I researched them. One is from Boston, one is from Texas. They are not local.
Thank you.
I think the other thing that I would like to clarify then as well is, despite where they're from, and since it might not have been a truthful location, I still found value in just their experience. That's all I was trying to allude to.
And I respect that, but the problem is, we have a public meeting, we open it up to, I like to say, our public. If everyone from Kingston wanted to show up to complain about, Pembroke water or Pembroke, busing, this is a Pembroke meeting.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem I have. If you're going to come here, you live in Pembroke, you're my constituency, I'm concerned with what you have to say. Again, there was only 6 or 7 people that spoke that night. There could have been 20, 25. Again, I'm just disappointed. If you're going to take a stand and you don't mind coming out in public, you should have the guts then to say who you are and where you're from. And that didn't happen. So, again, just the point, thank you, assuming that information is true. I was
Thank
just
you.
curious.
Thank you for
So,
clarifying.
thank you very much. I'm not questioning your integrity at all, Paige, same. It was one of those things that kind of bothered me. That,
It bothered all of us, and I think that's why we're bringing it up.
Yep.
We don't want to be associated with people thinking that we were part of pulling them in.
Yeah, no,
It's not.
I have no problem with that. All right, thank you. Anyone else, public comment?
There's just one comment in the school committee mailbox from David Norman, just imploring you to not send a letter to the MIA saying that there's no need to put Pembroke on the map for all the wrong reasons. So, okay, that's the only thing in the box.
Thank you for your input. We're going to take this up a little bit further down the agenda, but
next?
topic 4, acknowledge and schedule visitors. Nobody? Right, we're good? Adjustments to the agenda?
The only adjustment I might suggest is, depending upon how long the teaching and learning and student service presentations are, we can absolutely move fees to the next one if we need to, but just keeping an eye on the time, that would be the only potential adjustment.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Just depending upon how long student services and teaching and learning budgets are, we can look to move fees to the next week if we need to, that's all. I know there's a point of diminishing returns at some point here, so appreciate the cognizant of that.
Communications?
I have one. Excuse my voice, but yesterday I had the opportunity to go to MASC, Mass Association of School Committees Advocacy Day on the Hill with Joe Hopen as well as Lorcan Finnegan, and we had a chance to learn about issues related to education in Massachusetts, as well as meet with State Representative Kathy Lenatra, as well as representatives or staff from Senator Dylan Fernandez's office, and communicate some issues that are relevant to our schools. And so I just wanted to clarify, or rather bring that up. And Joe, if you have any thoughts that you want to share, feel
Yeah, I
free.
want to thank you again for inviting me to that. That was such an amazing experience, and seeing all that stuff being talked about at school committee, I feel like I learned so much, and it was an amazing experience to go to the State House too, because I had never done that, and being able to talk with the representative and senator about things that were happening in our school was a really great experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Outstanding. We actually will have Representative Lenatra, Representative Sweezy here the 14th, I believe is the meeting. I'm still waiting to hear back from Senator Fernandez's office, but the other two have confirmed for that evening. So if anybody wants to come. Okay, discussion of the potential MIAA correspondence and possible vote. Let's go down the road. Ladies, thoughts? Katrina?
Yeah, excuse my voice. I wrote something down just because I think it's easier. I want to thank those who shared their perspectives. I know advocating for what you believe in isn't always easy, so I really do appreciate your advocacy. I've spent significant time reflecting on this issue in my role as a school committee member and the best interest of our students. While I acknowledge the concerns regarding fairness and safety sparked by the events in some other districts,
We have to be clear about our role. We govern Pembroke, not the MIAA or other districts. As a committee, we do not act on personal opinion. We follow the law. Rights are defined by statute, and when the law is clear, there's no requirement to debate a protected right. Currently, there's no demonstrated issue within our district. Massachusetts law is explicit, and even if MIAA policies changed, state law would still govern our obligations. Sending a letter advocating for our policy changes risks undermining trust and could be interpreted as a move to limit the rights of a protected group. For these reasons, I do not support this committee sending a letter to the MIAA. While I encourage families to advocate at the state or federal level, our duty here is to ensure Pembroke students remain safe in an inclusive environment for every student. And that's a commitment I intend to uphold.
Thank you. Allison?
I agree a lot with what Katrina said. The other parts of this that I look at is how this would affect, I guess, the teams that we have, that we don't have a girls team and a boys team. So there's just multiple levels of this that would potentially like limit Cora from being able to be on a boys team and then a boy being on like field hockey or volleyball, but we only have one of the sex, girls or boys. So a lot of what Katrina said would have covered what I would have said
Okay.
too, so.
Nope, thank you. Sue?
Sure, so I want to first start off by saying that I feel like, this discussion really should not be about excluding anyone. This is really about ensuring all students have fair access and, a fair and meaningful opportunity. And so I hear what everybody's saying about, how this could potentially hurt trans students. And so I want to sort of put that, back on what is best for all students. And so I want to explain to people at home something really important. And I think Katrina mentioned it, and, it's been talked about with the law. And I want to explain what that is, because I really don't think that people understand what the law is. And basically, we have in Massachusetts, different than other states, it's different than our federal laws, but we have a state law that protects gender identity. So what does that mean practically? Well, any policy that we make as a committee cannot go against state law. So we can't then make a policy that's going to, somehow discriminate against someone who decides that they are, a female when they're a male or whatever it might be. So with that said, to me, this is really cut and dry, because what we need to do is then advocate for a way forward for our female students, because this really isn't about excluding trans women. This is about including biological women. And that's really what I want to focus on. So, the MIAA interprets the law the same way that we do as a committee, and they are following the law. And so what do we do with that, right? We have to follow the law just like the MIAA does, just like DESE does. Our school's required to follow the law. And so we don't have it's not within our purview to change any of that. So what I want to say is, currently, what we could do is, well, first of all, I want to clarify some misconceptions that I heard too. There's a couple. One, I heard one parent say that colleges may not see the opportunities. And what I did is I researched the MIAA, and yes, the colleges will be able to see all of the scores, but what it does is it, limits the opportunities for the student, so they don't have that opportunity to move on to the next level. So for example, if they're running like regular track and they get a great score, but a biological male beats them, and they are in 9th place, they can't move on to the next round, which means that they don't have that opportunity to compete at the next level. And ordinarily, they would be able to if they weren't, competing against a biological male. So, and then the other piece that I heard from the public was that the MIAA does, monitors and makes sure that the students are taking hormones or whatever, and they confirm that they're, I heard that multiple times. It's actually not true. The MIAA does not decide whether or not the student is taking any kind of hormonal therapy to become a female, or, there is no defined, the goal is the person identifies as a female and therefore is, and saying otherwise is discrimination. So I just wanted to kind of point that out because it is an important factor that, men really do have physiologically a different makeup, and, the competition really isn't necessarily fair. So it has, a real impact on females. That doesn't mean we should take away the opportunity for trans females. It means that we should find an opportunity for biological females. And so what I'm asking is, that what we do is find, the letter that I was imagining was something of the effect that maybe we can ask them to, let's say, for example, there are, there's 2 trans females who took up number 2 and 3 spot, and they're only advancing the top 8. Well, why not just include top 9 and top 10 to make up for those 2 males that are potential, the biological males that have sort of taken those spots. So that way the females aren't losing the opportunity. And I don't know if that's the answer, but it's one answer that we could come up with that is fair to all students. And a second idea that I had is, and this is probably, I don't know how this would work, but if there's like for example, if somebody's running an 800 meter and they get, maybe the qualifying score to go on to the next level is 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And then anybody who doesn't make that doesn't move on. And so that way you're not differentiating the male-female thing. So the cons with that really is that you could end up with a bigger playing field. I don't know. But what I would like to do is ask the MIAA to come up with a working group to solve for a way to make this fair for biological female athletes. Because what we're doing now is not working, and it's actually causing more division when it shouldn't. The last thing we want is for biological females to be angry at, trans females for, whatever, like just for the mere fact they're beating them in this sport that they, it's a biological reality that they're going to beat them pretty much for the most part. So if we can just find a way to make more opportunities for females so that they're not losing out. And so that's really what I was hoping we could discuss. If you're agreeable to that kind of a discussion that does nothing to exclude anyone, but rather include more, then I would really love to talk more about that.
All right. Katrina?
I'll be brief. I don't support sending a letter because I don't support fixing a problem that doesn't currently exist in Pembroke.
Okay. I will come out in full disclosure. The head of the MIAA, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, was a college friend of mine. He lived up above me in college. He's actually on my cell phone. I saw him a few months back. So I just have to make that disclosure statement so no one can say one way or the other. Would we like to put this out as a motion to write a letter, not write a letter, and then take a vote on it, and it'll be cut and clear? And is everybody okay with that, or?
I'll take a motion.
I'd like to hear from Joe, because I think he might want to say
Oh,
something.
Joe, I'm sorry. Bad boy, I'm so sorry, sir.
I just have a little something written out too, but I want to say that as the student representative of Pembroke High School, I feel that it is crucial to represent the beliefs of the majority of the school. And with that being said, I feel that many students, including myself, are in support of trans athletes participating in the teams that they identify with. With trans youth already experiencing higher depression and suicide rates, excluding them from participating in sports, which stand for fostering community and having fun, is horrible in exclusion and makes these already horrible things get worse. And this makes trans athletes play on teams with a gender that they don't identify with, promoting further exclusion and discrimination on top of everything that they're already currently facing. On top of that, what has already been previously mentioned, but there are co-ed sports at PHS where biological men are playing on women's teams like field hockey and volleyball, and there seems to be no problem with that where real biological men are playing on female teams. And although I do see Cora's perspective, and I applaud her for speaking, participating on a male team as a biological woman versus a transgender woman is much different, and something that I feel Cora cannot really attest to, because although she said I was fine as a biological woman on the men's team, it may not be the same for a transgender woman. And I believe that this is about all women, trans women and biological women both. So I believe to support both that keeping the rules and not sending a letter is necessary.
Thank you.
All right. So I think the motion, Jerry, should be something along the lines of, do we send a letter to the MIAA in referencing trans athletes playing?
So I'll make a
either
motion
sport?
to not send a letter to the MIAA.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion before we?
Yeah, I just want to point out like that, number one, it was said that this is not an issue in Pembroke, and it in fact is. We have a parent sitting here tonight who mentioned that there's an issue in Pembroke. I know several athletes that weren't brave enough to come and speak about it because they were, who were directly affected, by the way, and weren't brave enough to come speak about it. And so it absolutely is a Pembroke problem, number one. Number two, I'm not asking to exclude anyone. I'm asking to include biological females in a different way so that no one is losing an opportunity. And so to say absolutely no to a letter, I think you're doing a disservice to many of the students in our community. And somebody has to point out that there's an issue to the MIA. Like, I know they know there's an issue, but I just came up with 2 suggested options we could say to the MIA. We could ask them to come up with a working group to find a way to make this fair for all students. What you're doing now is not fair to all students. However, if you implore the MIA to, have some kind of sort of a working group to make it fair to all students, then, at least we're advocating for our students in our community who are affected.
Okay. Any other comments?
It's up to you.
You're the chair.
Sure. No.
If you're going down the path of excluding people for being trans, because it might keep some people from getting into college or getting considered, what about kids that are in that race who are not going to college? Are you going to exclude them too? Just something for food for thought. Thank you.
My idea is to not exclude anyone. I don't want to exclude trans students. I want to include.
But by your logic, you would have to include more women.
Yeah.
So you'd
So
have to
the
go to 10,
trans
11, or
person-
12
Yep.
if they're not going to college.
Well, regardless of whether they're going to college, I'm not following your point.
Because the big point that was made was that this was taking away chances that they could get recognized by college sports.
Yep.
So by that same same logic, if somebody's not going to college, it's not that different.
Well, but they don't know at that age whether or not they're going to college. They haven't made any kind
And
of.
you may not always know that they're trans. By that same
Right.
logic, if
Well-
you're trying to target trans people, are you going to start testing everyone?
Well, that's the issue. So then maybe you
That's
do
expensive.
maybe do a timed thing. Everybody who's 2
That is-
minutes and 40 seconds and the 800 moves on, and then the others don't. I'm trying to find a way that doesn't exclude females because we have 2 protected classes clashing. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not supposed to have a discussion with you. I'm supposed to only see the chair, so I will step back. Sorry.
Thank you. All right, let's take a vote. We'll start down the end. So a yes vote would be, a yes vote is no, not to send a letter.
Not send a letter.
right? So it's kind of a yes or a no, I just want to make that clear,
To
right?
not send a letter. A
You-
yes vote is to not send a
A
letter.
yes vote, right? So you're aware
My
of that?
motion was to not send a letter.
Okay, so I just want to make sure.
It'd be a yes to say no.
Correct.
Yes. All right, so, let's start with Katrina, down to my right.
I think so I would be open to discussing those options, but I'm not prepared to say whether or not I want to send a letter because I'd want to think about those more.
Okay, but I said the discussion's kind of over, I need a yes or a no.
There's no
Or
more
you can
discussion.
abstain.
Well, I said, is there any more discussion? If you want to keep
Well,
discussing.
No, she wants to keep discussing, she wants
Yeah.
to talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, all
I
right,
was
well,
just-
I said I'd ask for a vote, and I started with Katrina.
Yeah,
If you want to keep
yeah.
discussing, let's keep discussing
I
then.
think I need time to consider Sue's suggestions before I say yes to writing a letter because I haven't had time to research those.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second, correct?
It's not a roll call vote, so it's all those in favor, opposed, abstained, and then you're going to do your numbers.
And then, can I make a second motion to delay this to the next meeting? Delay the vote to the next meeting?
You have to
Everyone-
take the motion that's on the table right now, which is to not send a letter to the MIA. Once that is completed,
Right.
then you can
Then
make
we do a
another
second
motion.
motion.
You can't have two of them open at the same time. Or my
Okay, so-
minimal knowledge of Robert's rules. of-
Yeah,
Okay.
Robert's
We
Rule
don't
of
do
Order
this
is
a lot
coming into
here,
play
but I'm
here.
pretty sure that that's what it is.
No, I'm pretty sure you're
I'm
correct.
going to vote based on sending a letter, not necessarily on those recommendations. And perhaps we look at it again next time to.
Can we look at it again if we voted no?
I withdraw my motion.
Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think somebody needs to second it.
All right,
Second.
so I think as the chair, I have the prerogative to say, let's revisit this at our next meeting, give everybody a chance if they want to do some research, talk to the public, get some feedback from various parents, other people of influence who make comments. I don't want to make it look like we're kicking the can down the road, but there seems to be a little bit of, some ideas that came up in the discussion that gives people,
I'd like to consider it.
Can we send this to policy to discuss? Like, is there one of our subs that can?
Yeah, we're meeting tomorrow.
It's not on the agenda for
It's not
tomorrow,
on the
so we
agenda
will
for
not be
tomorrow. So you
discussing
can't
that
do it there.
tomorrow.
But, because it's somewhere that this can go.
So it would only go to policy if you're looking to create a policy here.
And we're
So-
definitely
so-
not.
So
And we're
none of the
not.
groups, none of our
None of your
subcommittees fit
subcommittees would
this.
pick
that
this
would
up.
fall
No.
into this now. All right, so we have the motion pulled back. I am going to
I'll make a
say,
motion.
Table
I'll
it?
make a motion to table this until the next school committee meeting.
okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? There we go. We're gonna push it to the next meeting. And again, I don't want people to think we're kicking it down the road. I think there's some information that came up that nobody wants to make a rash decision. Okay?
Without thinking it through, yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Approval of the bill schedule?
It'll go out in the morning.
They go out in the morning, okay. Consideration for approval, I'll take a motion on the meeting, school committee meeting, March 17th, 2026. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Before you move on, I would like to make a small adjustment.
Sure.
So during the discussion on the superintendent's salary and the vote, I abstained, but I didn't verbalize it. And we said that you had said all
Oh.
in favor. It was a really long meeting.
Yep, I apologize.
So, but I had abstained, and I'd just like to correct the record. And it's not that, of course, I love Erin. She knows I love her, and I think she does a great job for the district, and it has nothing to do with that. It's just that I thought it wasn't fiscally responsible to give more than what she had asked.
So you're gonna be recorded as a no vote?
So I think technically it has to be
She
abstained.
abstained.
Abstained, okay.
So,
Okay, Natalie, we have that? Okay, approval of the school committee meetings with that slight adjustment or correction. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
No abstain. Aye.
Natalie, the ayes have it. Okay, let's jump into the superintendent's report.
Sure, we are going to start with the teaching and learning fiscal year 27 budget. Here you go, Mary Beth.
Here we go. First of all, I just want you to know the people that are involved in creating this budget. They are the content supervisors for STEM and humanities at the high school. Dr. Mark Galligan is at the helm of the humanities with English and social studies history. And Mr. Jonathan Shapiro is our STEM coordinator as well, and we also have the great privilege of working with Savia Savizada, who is in charge of world language, and as you know, Melinda, who you've met a couple of times in the past 2 years as her position is new, who's now working with our elementary building principals to improve curriculum at the K-6 or pre-K to 6 level. I know it's gonna work. Natalie, will you pass the keyboard? It might work for you. Thank you. Let's see if this works.
I was asking Aline to be Vanna White over there if you want.
Just frozen, I think.
You don't need, now just do push it again in the file a bit earlier. You should be good to go.
Okay, so tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the goals that we set for last year, how we're doing with those goals, and then we're going to talk about our goals for 2027 and some of our budget requests this year, and then some of our next steps. As you know, we've had a number of great celebrations this year in the K-6 realm. Melinda was here and she talked about those pilot programs for FOSS and for Simplify Writing. Both were well received by our teachers, and they invested quite a bit of their time into those programs and integrating those new materials into their existing curriculum. Quite a few people, I'm guessing now at the number, but quite a few people also signed up for an after-school professional development on the Writing Revolution, which has really taken off around the district, and people are using that as well to continue to work on that skill of writing, which is the most elusive and most difficult skill that we seem to face in the humanities. As you know, you've approved all the new courses that we had last year. We had 3 in the Project Lead the Way realm and 3 in the AP realm. And in terms of academic achievement, we had great success with the Seal of Biliteracy. Again, amazing success for our AP students. 72% of our seniors took at least one AP exam. That's incredible. 60% of our seniors scored a 3 or higher on an AP exam. And we have 33 students presently slated for internships and completing some type of pathway for this year. So quite a range of accomplishments in those areas. One of the things we also did this year that I think is worthy of just a little bit of a note is for professional development, we gave teachers a lot of choices this year. Some years lend themselves to that type of a format, and some years we're introducing a district-wide curriculum or a district-wide program that requires us to focus all as a team. But we were able to provide choice this year, and we've had a lot of great feedback from different specialist groups that were able to work on something specific to their discipline and to their curriculum, and using that time really efficiently and in a way that made them really excited about the work that they were doing. So I felt that was kind of a nice win that we don't talk about a whole lot, but something that adds to sort of the culture of the buildings and the district as a whole. Again, you know already sort of our focus areas for this year in terms of the science and the writing. But one area we have not talked a lot about is we have been looking at the efficacy of our reading programs, particularly Lexia, iReady, and then our Dibbles program and UFly program, which also includes a Heggerty piece as well. So there's lots of different programs, as you just heard me rattle off. And we wanted to take a look at that and make sure that the progress that we are seeing in our K-2 students, where most of that foundational science of reading curriculum lives, we want to see what's happening now in grade 3. So we've been looking at the grade 3 students and how do we keep that momentum going. Because we are in our early years and transition years with UFly, we were able to use the UFly product for a little bit for grade 3. But now we want to take a look and see, is there something else out there that we can do with our grade 3 students to keep that momentum going? One of the things that reading specialists talk about ad nauseum is the fact that you've got to get your phonics down. That's a huge piece of the work. But then the next step is morphology, right? Where does the word study come from? How do words form? What is the root words for many? What is the root of many words? So that kind of work is what we're looking at now. There are 2 programs that our reading specialists are exploring. We're hoping to do some sort of train-the-trainer model where our reading specialists would be able to go to that training and bring that information back and work exclusively with grade 3 next year, but then see if that's necessary for us to continue. In my estimation, in terms of understanding sort of skill development, the spiraling is usually the best thing, so that you're doing something each year that continues to evoke those skills and to reinforce the learning that you had in those early years. So I'm excited about the work that they're doing with that. Grades 6 to 12, we started off with some pretty lofty grant applications this year. We're still waiting to hear for a grant for our Innovation Career Pathway designation. That is an interesting grant because you get designated an Innovation Pathway school, and then you become eligible for other grants. So that's really, that assignation is a big one in terms of making us a more competitive contender for monies that the state has. We will find out about that in April, so fingers crossed. We sometimes have some mixed results in those larger grant applications, so we're hoping that we are able to meet their criteria.
How much could that be?
It depends, because it depends on each year. So you don't just get a lump sum grants, but you say, oh, I want to expand this room to make it more like a lab, or we need this particular piece of equipment. So that's the kind of, and we applied specifically for the engineering pathway, but if we get the designation for the engineering pathway, we will go next year for another pathway, so that each of our pathways will have that advantage when we do apply for grants. So it's
like the innovation grant is just saying that we are a great school of innovation? I mean, like, what
it is.
Okay.
It's like a gold star.
Okay.
So it's a big deal when you're applying for other grants.
Okay.
And it makes you eligible for state grants as well, but it's a sought after designation. So
Okay.
kind of, you get to, I think, in my mind, I think of it as like you skip a step when you have that designation. So it's a positive.
Who's doing the grant writing? Is it?
Mostly
Gates or you?
myself and, in this case, Jonathan Shapiro.
Okay.
But we had a lot of input. We actually received a planning grant as well. So we're able to have our teachers work on it after their contractual day. So Mary Ellen Gates was highly involved, Robin Conathan, one of our guidance counselors, Charlie Morse, Mark Talbot. So it's a group of people. The grant also required us to reach out to various community members, because part of the specification of the grant is that you have like a working group that advises at some point. So we reached out to some former students who are now in the high-tech world. We reached out, or engineering world as well. We reached out to some parents that we know have been interested in the engineering pathway. So we have a nice group of people that are willing to form that group with us and help us down the road.
Great.
You also have to pull in somebody from like the workforce planning board. It's quite a grant. Yeah, I think it's when Jonathan did it, he did it when he was working in Brockton, and I think he said it was like 200 pages by the end of the grant.
Wow.
But they've streamlined it a little bit, but not enough for mine. So, yeah, they've done a good job.
198 pages.
Another grant that we applied for is called Investigating History. That we were successful in securing that. That will be for grades 6 and 7, and it will provide students in those grades with an inquiry-based model, much like the Open SciEd is in grades 6 through 8, but for grades 6 and 7, particularly in world history, it will provide them with an opportunity to explore materials that there's a lot of simulation, a lot of case studies, the kind of things that kids really get excited about when you say, okay, you're gonna play, this person today, and you have these mock problems that you have to solve. So I think it's a very rich curriculum. I'm very excited about it. We have hung back from applying for it because there have been other sort of things that have been going on with the teachers K to 6. There was a literacy push, and then we did the science push, and then there was, there's just been something every year. But now I feel like it's really a good place for us to start. It does go down as low as grade 3. It does extend to grade 3, but we're going to start with our 6th and 7th graders and see how that works for them. And I'm very excited about that as well, because our 6th and 7th graders are getting a taste of that in Open SciEd, some of that hands-on learning and real-life application, and I think it will dovetail with that. And I also think it'll be great for the teachers to be able to extend that pedagogy in their classrooms. So that's a win for sure. A nod to Mary Ellen Gates, Mrs. Gates, who continues to grow that program in the pathways. She has 21 new companies on board this year. She had 3 guest speakers. They've attended, many industry-focused field trips, and she herself teaches them employability workshops during their Titan time throughout the year. So students are engaged in mock interviews, creating resumes, their elevator speech, creating an online profile. They have LinkedIn pages. So there's a lot of really good practical learning that are happening in those workshops. In terms of some of the I would call it sort of a little bit wonky work that we're doing, we're looking very closely at grading practices, 7 to 12, and making sure that those practices are, for people that are teaching grade-alike courses, that we have those grading practices are consistent for grade-alike classes, that they're transparent, that they're easy for families to understand. That can sometimes get a little difficult for families when every teacher has their own sort of structure and way that they're doing things, and we really want to make an effort for those practices to be more consistent, 7 to 12. So we've been focusing on that. And finally, again, our professional development program this year, aside from the choice piece, there were some workshops that were actually defined by different facilitators, and 2 in particular that we were happy to have on board were Polly Bath, who I keep saying Polly Booth, so I'm going to say it right this time. Polly Bath, who came and worked with us for 3 sessions, and Alexis Reed. Polly Bath focusing on classroom behavior, and anyone in education is constantly hearing that there are differences in behavior versus 10 years ago, 20 years ago. She's been very helpful with the group that we worked with. I attended a number of her workshops and really liked her message and some of the strategies that she is identifying as positive for the classroom. Alexis Reed focused more on executive functioning and how executive functioning and anxiety and depression can be a challenge in that 7 to 12 realm, and how to work to support those skills. So after that, we do have some requests and some thoughts about how we can make next year even more fun and more exciting and more engaging for our students. So our 4 asks are in those buckets of personnel, curriculum development, and professional development, and new materials. We would like the committee to consider the restoration of the 2 positions at the middle school. If you recall, last year there was 2 FTEs that were cut from PCMS in science and social studies. Average class size of students right now is around 26, 27. You saw Donna's numbers at the last meeting. This would allow those course numbers to diminish, and would also probably allow us to offer an additional elective, although that would have to work that piece out. The other thing that I'm excited about is that we were able to add a math interventionist last year. I think that would be incredibly powerful for each of our elementary schools to have a math interventionist there. We are currently sharing her amongst the 3 schools, and she's doing a great job. She came to us highly qualified from another school district, and she's jumped right in and been able to bring a great skill set to that work. But I do think it would be helpful for each of our buildings to have access to somebody who would be able to work. When you have one, you have to really target what grade and what area is of the highest need. If we had to have an interventionist at each building, we'd be able to use that expertise in some other ways in terms of some push and support and working with older students as well as some of our younger students. So that's something to consider there. In keeping with the sort of the annual conversation about STEAM, one of the things that I would like to see, or in my group, and that's what Mike Tinker was alluding to when we were talking, is that we are very interested in adding digital literacy specialists at the elementary level. I think there is a place and a need for our students to have formal instruction in all things computer, for lack of a better way to say it, keyboarding, or typing, whatever that looks like to you. There is a digital literacy curriculum that is approved by the state. It has everything to do with social media, has a lot to do with safety. It goes into the realms of coding. There is just so much you can do. I see that as a specialist position but a position that would require, planning and instruction specific to digital literacy skills. So, why not ask for 3?
Could it not be part of just the normal day, like the curriculum that they get from their classroom teacher?
Well, some of that is happening, Allison. Yes, there's coding that happens in some of the math classes, and there's some time on the keyboard, and there is, but this is a dedicated period.
So it would be
where-
like a rotation.
Correct, it would be like a specialist rotation. So think the digital literacy specialist, which is what a lot of our librarians are now at, throughout Massachusetts, but that would be somebody who could do all of that, could do some of the library work as well as a lot of the online education pieces that, yes, teachers are stepping up and integrating as best they can, but they have very deep and challenging curriculums that they're also responsible for. So they are weaving those skills in as best they can, but this would give a dedicated place.
So this, okay, I'll let you go to the next
Yeah, no,
one.
I was just thinking, like, one, just for, like, off the top of my head, it used to be the Microsoft Suite, now then the Google Suite, but now there's, the Canva, there's so many different tools out there, and teachers can certainly work with sort of one set of skills, but this would give kids a broader experience in terms of what is new, what's current, and best practices around technology, and when to be alarmed, and what emails do you click on, and what emails don't you click on. Like, there's a lot out there right now that I think would be really beneficial, and I'm not sure that always fits in a day-to-day curriculum. I think it will happen on a more consistent and uniform basis when you have a person responsible.
So it's kind of like the 21st century in the middle school, like this would be sort of.
I wouldn't necessarily go into some of the well, maybe, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily get into sort of like dreaming about the future or anything like that, but I think, yes.
Sounds more like practical things that you may
digital
not
safety.
think, like the
Yeah.
Well,
phishing
I think
emails
that's
and
a lot
things like
of what
that.
they do in the 21st century class.
They do,
right?
but they delve into lots of realms,
But
right?
this would like be the pre.
This would be the place,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like I'm probably getting old, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like we need like almost like less of the digital piece in the elementary level, and I would like to see something like that in the middle school perhaps when they're starting to really get introduced to social media and stuff, but like, I don't know why it bothers
So
me.
I think what we've talked about at the elementary level is that 4th specialist rotation, and what does it look like, right? So students have music, art, and PE, or wellness at the elementary level. We've dabbled in very many versions of library or STEAM or STREAM. There was a point where we had one library paraprofessional in every building, then 2 years ago we shared one. And what we consistently hear for feedback from building administrators, from teachers, and from that specialist teacher group is that there's a need for that 4th specialist. And what I think Mary Beth is trying to give you is ways in which we could use that to capture some of the other places where we don't have dedicated personnel, whether it's digital literacy. We used to have a course that we made all 9th graders take at Pembroke High School in digital literacy. That was eliminated several years ago. But this position would also pick up the pieces of the library that you all have talked a lot about since we've kind of shifted the model. So picking up that rotation.
No, I get the whole library need, and even like the STEAM that, I just.
Yeah, I don't anticipate teaching kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade about Instagram.
No.
But there's those Dash robots in the back. There's all kinds of equipment that we've purchased in the past that we don't have any dedicated staff in these libraries now that kids are using it. Yes, they do come in and use the Lego board or the light board, but it's not, there's a curriculum that goes with that we're not
And it
able to use.
doesn't need to always, yes, the name of it is digital literacy specialist, but I'm also thinking about, Mrs. Nugent did a really lovely job in terms of lots of collaboration skills and sort of engineering design and things with the
Bridges
blocks
and
and
toothpicks
bridges.
and
So I see this role encompassing that
Right.
type of curriculum in particular.
Problem solving, team
Right, all of that.
I get all that,
Yeah.
That's.
And again, you're going to see like in the next thing, I also share your concern about the screens and where we're going with that and how are we going to do what's best for students, So that's coming. I want money for that too.
I like seeing the learning to type because that's
Yes. I
Only
know.
one of my
type is
kids
okay.
knows how to type, and it's the one I taught. The
Right.
rest of them have not learned it.
No, I.
You didn't love the others
It's
at
an
all?
essential,
I
it's an
didn't have
essential
to. They
skill.
learned it in
It's-
school.
I literally taught my kids to type
Yeah.
just because of that reason,
Well,
so I agree with you.
But, yeah, but you see this is not a para position, this is a teacher position.
I believe that that role is a teaching position.
Okay.
I don't want to take anything away from what Kate developed. Kate developed an amazing curriculum. Kate is also a certified teacher, so, you know.
I'd also add that one thing I see here is, right, kids are going to use technology anyway, but I think right now we don't, aside from what's integrated into class time, which is limited for extra time, we don't necessarily have, digital safety dedicated as a position. So I think, kids are going to use technology outside of school. It would be great to have more dedicated time to teach them how to use it safely. And I think we should still look at the overall time that we're having kids on technology, but I see that as a value add, teaching them how to use technology safely.
Yeah, and I especially see it for upper elementary. Again, our 5th and 6th graders, many districts, our 5th and 6th graders are in a middle school. So we have to think about what that looks like developmentally right now, and I do think that this would be timely for those students. Again, to Erin's point, probably not doing that in pre-K and K. Do something different with those students. And the last ask I have, just because I can't give it up, I really do believe that having an elementary world language exposure is important, and I know it's a huge, nice to have.
I'm 100% on board with that
I
idea.
feel like I should
Yeah.
just always be reminding us that that is a really good goal, and it is.
A lot of schools around us have that as well, right? So
It's easier to learn the younger they are, right?
It's so
Yeah.
important to learn
Yeah.
at a younger age,
Yeah.
and developmentally, it's so much easier. Like, that's
You
what they
retain it
do
more.
Yeah.
in, like, Spain and stuff. Like, they start learning English in elementary school, and they're all so much better at English than we are at Spanish because we learned it
Yeah.
later. So I feel like that's really important.
13's like late.
Yeah.
yeah, agreed.
I'm not going to, obviously, drag you through each of these things, but I wanted you to have a sense of what summer curriculum work looks like. These are the title of some of the workshops that people have proposed. We propose them. They don't always run depending on people's schedules in the summer, but these are some of the things that we would like to get ahead of. In the summer is the best time for us to bring large groups of people together to do that work. On the bottom is also some of the stuff that is associated with actual, professional development in regards to instruction. So you can see there's a number of asks regarding the AP Summer Institutes. In my mind, that's really important. It's also really important to start growing the bench. So I think over the next couple of years, you're going to start to see some people, you're just like, we already have that teacher, but we need to have a bench too, because it's hard to find certified AP teachers. So that's a important area. Again, Project Lead the Way, we're going to be looking to add that 4th course, which is the capstone course for the biomedical and engineering students. I already spoke to you about the reading specialist. That's some training that they'll decide what is the best course of training for them over the summer. And then our investigating history teachers will be doing some training as well. Some of that is grant covered, but some of that falls on us as well. So it's kind of a split cost. In terms of our new instructional materials, we need to replace a few texts at the elementary level. We've talked a lot about FOSS Science. That is an enormous first-year cost, but that is only a first-year cost, and then the next years fall into place. And then the grade 3 reading, we saw one product, and this was the number that we got for one of the products. UFly, which would be the best fit for us, isn't releasing their product, I think, until June 1st. So we don't want to commit to anything until we see what UFly has. It makes the most sense to stay in line with the philosophy and the pedagogy of our K-2 group, but we just weren't sure what they were going to develop. But that would be we'd like to go with that. That's pre-K to 5. In terms of our older students, we'd be looking at some updated curriculum materials for U.S. History 1 and 2, some online access. These are things that would support Algebra 2. The DBQ online is a resource for our teachers that teach world history and geography. And again, these are mostly support types of things. These aren't huge purchases except for the U.S. history texts. Those are 10 years old at this point, and there's just a wear and tear element that goes with those texts. Also, nowadays, there's a digital component that goes with all these things, and once that license runs out, you have to buy the package, so it kind of comes to this point. So, my whopping ask.
It's under $1 million.
It's under $1 million. I think last year it was like over $1 million, so. Again, I don't want to be cavalier about this. I understand the seriousness of the place we are with budgets, and I understand the generosity of the town, and we have benefited greatly from your guidance in the past. So I'm just wanted to come to you with some of our, most creative thinking, like, what if we could do this, and how would that benefit our students, and what do we think down the road would be some of the best use of our resources? So that is where we fell. And I made a pie chart because I was so excited about the pie chart. So excited to see that.
So just a couple of pieces to Mary Beth's presentation. First of all, we do have $100,000 worth of money that we got last summer for capital for curricular materials. We have not used that yet. So when we bring this back to you as part of admin recommended, some of that I would assume maybe the FOSS science number will come down by that. In addition, because we did have those positions that were frozen at the beginning of the school year, and though we've been successful in filling some, we have not been successful in filling others. We do have some what would be considered one-time funds within our current fiscal year 26 budget. So some of the stuff is definitely things that we could talk about funding outside of the FY27 budget cycle. But for anybody that's new at this process, we always ask for 3 or 4 of things, and then when we come back as level 1, we're like, okay, let's try to build it. Let's start with 1, and the next year we'll ask for another one. So we're just trying to get the ideas onto the table. So the conversation about digital literacy or elementary world language, we're just trying to get some traction to get it started, and then we are confident that we can come back to you in October and April and tell you how great it is, and then in the next budget cycle, it's a no-brainer, which is what we did with social workers. It's what we did with reading specialists. It's really just kind of, if you build it, they will come. And I think anytime we've asked, we've been cognizant of the fact that, $240,000 for an initiative associated with digital literacy is a big ask, but can we get one, and can we start to get some momentum there? So,
What would be your number, if you had to pick one position, what would be your number one?
You're asking only Mary Beth, right?
Only Mary Beth. I want to see what she says.
Right answer only.
There's only one answer.
It's like a Sophie's choice.
Nobody said it had to be on your slide.
Oh. That's a lot for my brain.
I know what the answer is.
I do think we
Me
need,
too.
I think we
Let's
need
see if the answers
a
are right.
specialist at the elementary level. I think we really do, for a number of reasons. Be that a world language specialist or a digital literacy specialist, I do think that. I also think, the middle school, this sounds so cliche, our kids' needs are bigger. And I don't know how to explain it to people that aren't in education, but classrooms with 22 to 24, 26, 28 kids, you can have so many different learners, which is not that unusual, but now we have so many ways to differentiate. The time it takes to do that differentiation, it's really challenging. In combination, behaviorally, students are different, and that's okay, and we have to keep up with that, and we have to adapt to that. But I do believe that the smaller you can keep your classes, the more you're going to benefit. I really essentially believe that, and I haven't always believed that, and it doesn't hold for every discipline or every situation, but I think in the time and place that we're in right now, I am seeing some of that,
So she wants it all, Sue. That's what she said.
that's what I heard.
didn't answer. She picked all of them.
didn't answer.
I want it all.
I don't know, it's hard, those are hard choices.
You're going to see it as a level 1 in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
whatever we decide.
When my people outvote me, it'll be wonderful.
Any other questions for Mary Beth?
Just a few things, Dave.
I'm sorry,
Next
no,
year-
I skipped.
Yep, I'll go quick.
Nope.
Just a few things. We're hoping to implement FOSS next year, hoping to work with the grade 3 and upper elementary for literacy, do some history pilots, the new classes that we have coming up. And then at the bottom, Sue, to your point, we want to continue to work on making the grading processes, fair to all students, regardless of, who's teaching the course. The course should have some expectations that are consistent. Screen time in school is going to be something that we take a hard look at next year through some kind of committee work. And then Mike Tinker has been working with a group of teachers 7 to 12 regarding artificial intelligence. He'll be sharing that with Erin and with our strategic leadership team probably at our next meeting. And in some shape or form, you'll be seeing some of that information come back here. So those are some of the bigger things that are swirling around out there in education that we want to dip our toes into.
My apologies.
Oh my
Sorry
gosh,
about
no worries.
that. Questions, folks, anybody?
I just have one thing to say.
Oh.
At the MAS conference, we learned about how Kathleen Altra told us about how in Plimpton the class sizes were much, much smaller than the other
Elementary
schools
schools, yeah.
in Silver Lake, and as a result, the students from Plimpton, much more of them were in AP classes and had a higher success rate. So I feel like that just attests to the effect that small class sizes can have, and I feel like that really is.
It's a good takeaway.
Crucial.
I was thinking the same thing, Joe. I was
Yeah.
thinking about that too.
Yeah.
But do we know the population of?
Plimpton is very small.
Yeah,
Very
so
small.
the
I mean, that's what I'm
class
saying,
sizes
they're-
were tiny at elementary school level.
Yeah.
But then when
Then
they
they
got,
feed into
those
Silver
same
Lake Middle,
kids,
yeah.
when they got to high school, there was most of the students in a certain AP class were Plimpton students, like way outsized the rest of the students. So that was
Definitely makes
interesting.
sense.
So one question I have that just came up that might be for, like, everything is probably you think, but can we get a list of, like, what we get funded through grants, like, in one of these, like, budget sub meetings or something? I'm just curious, like, what it looks like for grant funding.
Who gets to do student services budget?
Oh, that's Jess.
That's me.
She's real excited.
I kinda
This is
thought
her
so,
favorite
Jess.
night of the year, so give her a hard time. She gets so nervous.
Good job, by
She
the way,
gets so
Mary Beth,
nervous.
so.
You all know her. You can ask her anything. She knows the answer.
Special ed money. That's why it makes me anxious. I know I spend a lot of money. So tonight, overall, it's not just special education. Certainly, I want to provide some highlights, some celebrations, talk about special education, which is often the bulk of my position. Section 504, our English language learners. Just a little highlight on social, emotional, and behavioral supports. As you know, I did present a couple of months ago on more of an update. Budget requests, similar to Mary Beth, I've stayed under $1 million. And just our next steps as a department. So similar to what I had done last school year, in January, I had provided you with an update on performance and compliance related to special education. So there are a couple ways that both federally and state-wise we are looked at as an LEA, as a public school district, and meeting criteria both for performance and for compliance. One of the big things that we're required to do is perform, and they've changed the name so many times, but an integrated monitoring review. So this happens on a cycle every 3 years. So there is a Group A cycle and a Group B cycle. And part of that, they are looking at different criterion. So both with civil rights and in special education. It's quite a lengthy process. The first year is really gathering data for them. So uploading a lot of documents, providing evidence that we are meeting all the criterion. And then the second year is really their discovery phase. So they're going through all of our data and documents, and then they come on site. So part of that is actual observations. This year it was looking at the physical spaces, but they spend time looking at just our oversight, time on learning, equal access. They did engage with families and CPAC, as well as administration, and then providing us any feedback. As you guys know, through policy sub and then eventually policy, we had to update some of our policies based on their feedback. So things like the equal opportunity and access, our bullying plan, student discipline and restraint, some of those things that we had to update for them. It's a long list of criterion, as similar to Mary Beth. I will not read this, but just to kind of highlight some of the big things they look at is our ability for child find. So that is our outreach to families, to networking through preschools, getting information out there about special education, making sure families and community members, doctors, et cetera, know the process if they believe that a student or a child may have a disability that impacts their access.
They focus a lot on professional development and teacher licensure, our practices around kind of credentials, how we provide interpreters for families, that equal access piece and time on learning. So they look at our calendars, our schedules, as well as that bullying, discipline, physical restraint, and then comparability of facilities and access. So making sure what we're providing is equal to all of our students and families. So celebratory for us in our world. We were fully compliant, which is great. So we've implemented this is how they kind of scale it, implementation versus not. This kind of leads into our determination, which I'll talk about in a minute, one of the components for performance and compliance, but you'll see all of those are fully implemented and in compliance.
That's an amazing scorecard, by the way.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Again, last year we went into more detail about this. This is really the special education determination, which is required through IDA, so federally. It requires states to provide feedback on whether public schools and private schools are meeting or needing assistance in the area of performance and compliance. If you remember last year, the rating, they are about a year behind. So it used to be they'd come out in March for the previous school year. Then we didn't receive this until last June. So I thought it would be important to include tonight. So we are continuing to meet all those requirements at 88%. We certainly have areas to continue to grow. Our strengths were really in those compliance areas. So all the things I just talked about with our practices and policies, all the good things that we do, both with civil rights and in special education. And then there was some points lost in the performance area, and that really had to do with not meeting targets on MCAS and ELA in grades 4 and 8. So they set a different target than MCAS does, but there was some need for improvement, so we lost some points there. But overall, all the things they look at, they want to make sure that the majority of our students are fully included at 80% or more. They're looking at, same with preschool, that they are setting the most of their day is included with typical peers. They look at discrepancies as well as disproportionalities having to do with protected classes. They looked at maintenance of effort, which is really looking to make sure that we're spending an equitable amount of money on students with disabilities as the same we are with peers and typical students.
Jess, is there a state average for this? I mean, I'm assuming 88 would be good or very good, or?
I don't, it's meeting the requirements, so not all public schools meet the requirements. Some are in need of assistance. I'd have to look at some data to find out if 88 is.
Is it just meets or doesn't meet?
It's, so it's meets, needs assistance, needs intervention. So that's when the state comes in and provides more feedback and has much more of an intervention plan. Yeah, so it's the highest rating.
You can find it all online too. The school and district profiles, I believe, you can find. But if you look up special ed determination, you can look up any school's performance.
Do we know what last year's was, or this is a brand new?
So it's each year is a different matrix.
That's
So
what I thought.
although we met the criterion, what they looked at is different. So it's not really a comparability from one to the other.
But I feel like the 88% is an improvement from last year, because I feel like last year they didn't, whatever they looked at didn't show us as good, but it seems like we've improved.
Yeah, so we did meet the expectations last year. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look. I think we were in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. As you may remember, kind of looking back to last year, one of the major goals for the special ed department was really making sure that we focus on engaging families in the special education process, making sure that they feel that they have a voice, not only at that table during the IEP process, but really that their voice is heard, whether that's contacting teachers or participating in that team meeting. And so that was really our focus last year, as well as that new IEP, making sure families felt educated enough to understand their child's needs and how the process worked. So in June, we did an end of the year survey.
And as you can see, it was a great, we did similar to all the surveys that we put out. Wasn't a huge turnout, but we did receive a couple hundred responses in both those categories of surveys. The first one done by the district, and 100% of our families reported that they were asked about their input and concerns during the team meeting. They felt that they continued to have a voice, so about 84%, and 80% of families felt that they understood that new IEP during the team meeting. So we still have some work and focus to do on that, but I do believe that those were positive results. In addition, as part of that integrated monitoring review, they did DESE did a survey as well this fall, and they found similar results. So obviously into the 90s, it's a little bit different, and our representative explained it. Some people answered no, and some didn't answer some of the questions, so there was a little bit of variability and validity on that, but about 90% felt that they were included as a member, that they felt during IEP meetings they had time to provide comments and ask questions, that they feel that people explained things well, and that they really understood who to contact if they had questions. So some nice positives. Just going through some special education numbers as far as placements. As I said, the DESE is really looking for us to meet that 80% mark. We're about 78% of fully included, so those are students placements through special education that they spend the majority of their time, 80% or more, in that general education classroom setting. As we talk about placements for special education, we talk about less restrictive. So that's the least restrictive, as we want to be able to fully include students as much as they can be in order to access. There are times where students need to be pulled out for individual services and supports. That's considered a partial inclusion program. And then our substantially separate programs, as you've heard me talk about at the pre-K all the way to 22, are for students that require partial or most of their day out of the classroom. We have 2 tracks of programs at the elementary and one that continues on at the secondary level. One's a life skills track, and then our transition programs where students do transition into some of the general education as much as they can access, certainly for that socialization and time in the classroom for morning meetings, etc. Obviously based on individual needs. And then more restrictive if students are struggling continuously and are not able to access even our substantially separate programs and make effective progress. We do have students that receive their education out of district. So both public and private day programs are for students who, again, have not been able to fully access and make progress. And then residential students are for students who need, obviously, 24 hours a day to be able to meet their IEP goals and need that support. I put together a couple different slides just on the drivers for special education. As Erin said, my least favorite night of the year because I know that special education is quite expensive. And I just wanted to kind of go over some of the big drivers outside of staffing in general would be those out-of-district placement costs. And I just want to highlight a couple things as we look at the past 3 fiscal years. Certainly public day programs, so those are oftentimes our collaborative programs. So South Shore Educational Collaborative, Pilgrim Area Collaborative, Accept, Reads, North River, those are collaboratives that some of our students are placed in. And so those collaboratives cost less than a private day, but as you can see for the last 3 fiscal years that they have increased. So we started in 24 at around $40,000 was the average, and in FY26 we're looking at about 64, and that's average. So some are higher and some are lower. In addition, you can see public day programs have been around the same amount of money. They've risen just a little bit over the last couple years, and then residential programs vary. So this is an average, and in 24 we had 4 students, and then 3, and then 2 students. They can range anywhere from $650,000 a year to $300,000. So those are the most expensive. We do get reimbursed through circuit breaker for some of that. So in order to qualify for reimbursement, the total cost of tuition and transportation has to meet what's called a threshold. So the state sets a threshold, which I'll talk about in a minute, for a student. So for instance, if the threshold is $60,000, anything, and Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, $60,000, anything above $60,000 as a cost for that student can be reimbursed at a rate. We have yet to meet 100, so it's generally 60, 70% of whatever is over that. So if a student's 100 for a placement, it's $50,000 to transport, anything over that 50 is reimbursed. I did receive some information just about transportation, which I'll talk about next.
Just to stop you there just for a second, circuit breaker is one of those things that we consistently talk to our representatives about when they come, because when the circuit breaker formula was first introduced, it was introduced at 100% reimbursement over the threshold. We have never received 100% reimbursement over the threshold. There has been some gains in circuit breaker, so the transportation piece was added just a couple of years ago. Prior to that, transportation wasn't part of the calculation. They've also shifted the figure associated with special education as part of the Chapter 70 formula, but at the end of the day, the concept behind circuit breaker reimbursement was any district spend over the threshold is 100% reimbursable, and we're still working to get to that. So.
I'd almost like us to have something prepared that has this in it.
I have it.
And even give it to them ahead of time to be like, here you go.
And they're big numbers, right? So our
Yeah.
circuit breaker reimbursement year over year is $1 million, $1.2 million. So, and that's at a 70% rate. If we were able to get 100%, we're talking about another couple $100,000, which makes an
Would
impact.
fund lots of
Nothing that you saw tonight.
Everything I want.
I will say that was one of the things discussed at the Day on the Hill, was the reimbursement rate and increasing that. And I think that there is a bill, but I'll have to check to see what it is.
Yeah, the highest we've ever gotten, we got 84% one year. There's been years of 50%, there's been years of 75%.
Yeah.
But
even
the whole
show it-
theory of it was, once the district spends the threshold, everything above that's supposed to be reimbursement. Similar to the way regional transportation works, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think giving them our stats on all of this will be
Can do that.
helpful.
So the transportation costs, again, similar to that threshold, you can see it varies by year, that reimbursement rate. But you can see, obviously, for the in-district costs and out-of-district costs, what it costs us. So again, another large driver in special education costs for the district. Just noting that threshold for this fiscal year is at 53,431. That percentage has yet to be announced as far as that reimbursement piece for transportation. Sorry about that. So just looking at charting kind of our number of special education students, I've talked about this in the past, but even though our enrollment has been declining, our special education enrollment has not. We are in line with the state, but that does tend to increase year by year over the last 4 fiscal years. So we have 519 students. That changes on a daily basis, but when I formulated this slide, that we were at 519, about 21% of our students are in special education.
That does not include the 504s.
Nope.
This is just IEP.
Correct, special education. Our current funded positions, so we think about what's currently in the budget for fiscal year 26. We have obviously a variety of staff and supports, and all of these are tied to binding IEP services and supports through IEPs, as well as some additional supports through our intervention models. As you know, we have not been able to fully roll out our social emotional program at the elementary level with the budget freezing, and then opening back up, we have not been able to find fully staffed to be able to open that program up. We are Still hopeful, and I'm excited still to do that as we move forward. But those positions are included in here as well, just so that you could see the total picture. There are some services that we don't require a full-time person, and it could just be a few hours a week or up to half-time, and those are contracted service providers. So we contract with a variety of agencies for those, between local collaboratives, and different schools in Massachusetts to provide those to us. As Allison mentioned, that number did not include Section 504. So 504 plans are plans outlined to provide accommodations and/or supports and services for students into which they have an identified disability that really impacts their or substantially limits one or more of their life functioning. They don't require specialized instruction, but they may require accommodations or support throughout their day. So Section 504 is a federal law, and it's not just for students. It could be for adults in the workforce where they have a limiting disability that impacts them. So as you can see, in addition, slightly less of an increase, but we have 231 Section 504 plans across the district. Varies per building as far as percentages. Some of those plans are medical plans. So previously we would have, about 4 or 5 years ago, we had students on medical plans, which were devised by the nurse, and it was our legal advisement to create Section 504 plans for the majority of students that have a medical plan. So they may have a diagnosis of diabetes, and they do require some sort of support and accommodations throughout their day. So that was a little bit of that bump in the number going even before the 2022 number. And then not to forget our English language learners, which I also oversee in the department. Our L's have stayed pretty consistent. We had 1 year of a little bit of a raise in that 23-24. We have 66 students that are considered English language learners within the district. The majority of those students receive direct instruction from our English language learner teachers, our ESL teachers, and the variety of languages. In the past, I've done kind of a pie chart, and this year Kirsten had shared some information with me and put this into different languages, and I thought that was kind of cool to see. We don't have a large concentration per se in one or more areas, but if we looked at kind of the wheel of the graph, our Brazilian Portuguese and Egyptian Arabic are the larger speaking of the languages.
There's 2 languages here I don't even recognize.
Yeah. Tag along?
Yeah. Where are you from if you speak Tagalog?
That's a good question. I think it's a part of Africa, but I'm going to have to ask Kirsten.
That's very interesting. Okay.
You're listening, Kirsten? Right in the chat. Are you Googling it?
I feel like it's in Asia.
It's Philippines.
I was gonna
Okay.
say
Philippines.
All right, and my apologies.
No, you're fine.
I was thinking it was
I couldn't remember either.
And then I think
say
this
it
one
sounds
is
like a
South
Pacific Islander.
American Indian.
Yeah, that's kind of cool to see it like that.
It is.
We're all going to do some research when we get home.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure
My
that, I'm pretty sure
apologies.
that they're native from India, but they're in one of the South American countries.
So I shared this chart when I did the social emotional update a couple months ago. This is just our tiered levels of support for students in the social emotional realm. Tier 1 are strategies that happen in that general education classroom provided by our DCAP, our district accommodation plan, and our embedded social emotional programming. Oftentimes these tiers occur being responsible by that gen ed teachers or supports that are in the classroom. Tier 2 are really those targeted interventions, small group counseling, social skills group, behavioral contracts, our Compass and Titan labs, our social workers and our school psychologists implement a lot of those Tier 2 interventions. Our behavioral consultation, so with our behaviorists, that BCBA LABA that we often talk about, There are times where students require that referral at that level of intervention, and/or they have services on their IEP that require a behaviorist. Our behaviorist is contracted. She currently has 47 students that she works directly with as far as consultation. So she's working with our staff. She's designing behavior plans. She's analyzing data, and then really training staff on data collection as well. And then beyond that is our RBTs, our registered behavior technician. So this position this year is grant funded. So over the last couple of years, you've heard me talk about our health and wellness grant. And so we have been fortunate enough to hire an RBT to provide this level of intervention through that grant. This person works, and I know the elementary principals talked a lot about this position, that direct implementation of behavior plans. And although this person's only been able to work with 7 students, it's been very effective as far as the model. So working directly with a student, implementing a behavior plan, modeling for staff to be able to pull back and have staff then, our current staff, implement those behavior programs and reduce that dysregulation of students. So just some numbers in there of the tiers and how many students have been accessing these to date this school year. And then budget requests. So there are times in special education that I consider some of the asks requirements versus a request or a kind of a nice to have to build the department. So in special education, we do our best to provide services and supports to individualize services. At times, we're unable to do that with the current staff. So looking into next fiscal year, there are some additional requirements both at the middle and the high school, as well as Habermas. This comes from a variety of reasons. You heard Mark talk at the high school level, and a little bit from Donna as well about the need to provide, pull out kind of substantially separate content instruction to students, as well as increasing kind of the number of students that require inclusionary supports at both the secondary, the middle, and the high school. And with the current staffing, they're unable to do that with projections into next year. And then Habermas runs with what we consider 2 moderate special education teachers, although they house our substantially separate programs. If we took those away, there would only be 2 special education teachers to provide services, where the other buildings in the elementary level have 4, and at times they've had 5 teachers. And they've been able to sustain up until going into next year. So looking at the required number of special education, we call them minutes, in a pull-out kind of setting for instruction, 2 teachers would not be able to do that, and beyond even a responsible kind of way of scheduling. There's just not enough time in 2 teachers' day for the number of students that require that pull-out setting.
Yeah, so that's a non-negotiable.
Yes.
Great, just to
It comes to
clarify.
you, so when we bring you admin recommended, it'll be the first thing under above level 1.
Yeah. And then in special education, I think to make our middle and high school more effective and be able to individualize without having to do things like cross groupings of grade levels or skills, as well as support both the buildings kind of just in the overall scheduling of things change. So sometimes we start the year with what we think we can sustain as far as staffing, and we get halfway through the year and we're trying to reschedule all the time, change up caseloads. So I believe that providing a full-time teacher at the middle and the high school would expand our ability to be able to support students in special education in a more effective way, really zoning in on those individualized needs, as well as smaller groupings. Although regulation-wise, we can have up to 8 students in a pull-out setting, and 12 in a substantially separate if there's a paraprofessional in there. While we can do those kind of things, the responsible decision-making would allow us to provide more individualized support for students.
So you're thinking you'd have one at each school?
Yeah, so the requirement is one total, 0.6
Yeah.
at the high school and 0.4 at the middle school. We all know that those are unicorns in the sense that hiring for a fractional position is very difficult, given our schedule.
Yeah.
We also are not in a place where the schedules
Yeah.
aligned enough to share staff. So the requirement is one, the request is an additional one,
Yeah.
so that it would be a full-time
So,
at
because
each.
if we did the split, it would have to be 2 people doing
Correct.
half-time, part-time
Our
jobs.
schedules don't line up
But
where.
by doing the full request, you would have, do you know, how many co-taught or pull-out, what do you envision it looking like if there were one at each school? Like, would you have one co-taught at
So
each?
keep in mind, so if you look, if she needs a 0.6
Yeah.
at the high school and we
That's-
give her a 1.0, then there's two sections that
sections
she can play with.
additional.
Yeah,
And the
so this is
0.4.
3 classes and that's 2 classes.
Correct.
But how many of those are pull-out and how much of that is like a co-taught?
It would be co-taught, because the pullout's the required piece, right? The
Yeah.
co-taught is more
Okay,
of
so you
a-
would shift teachers around, and so you would have 2 co-taught classes that are required, and 3 co-taught classes are required at the high school?
Correct.
To cover the pull-out.
Yes, that's the
Got it.
required
Got
amount.
it.
So there's
Yeah.
3 additional sections when Megan Cullum, who's our secondary coordinator, does, how many sections do I need based on the students in each grade level and who can teach what. She's short 3 sections at the high school and similar to at Erica Swift at the middle school, 2 sections. So
Yeah, no,
it's easier at the secondary to talk about it in sections and courses versus the elementary
Right.
where.
Also keep in mind, at the high school, we do have a couple of other fractional positions. So there's a 0.4 business floating out there, there's a 0.6 Spanish, so it would be a unicorn that is sped licensed with a business license and a Spanish, Latin, French license, but there is some ability to pair to make full-time, because those jobs are the most attractive, right, is to fill for
Yeah,
full-time.
definitely. No, I like the idea.
We are
of
creative
co-taught.
thinkers.
I like co-taught.
We do
Yeah.
too, but it's just really expensive.
It's
It
very
is.
expensive.
Yeah.
It sure is,
Yeah.
but it makes a
great.
huge difference,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then in the social emotional behavioral requests, as I mentioned, our current RBT is funded through a grant. And you heard each of the elementary principals requesting a full-time RBT per elementary building. And then Don McGarrigle talked about a 0.5. I do fully support that. That would allow us to obviously provide that intervention model much more streamlined at the elementary level especially, and obviously supporting our middle school, being able to target students more effectively when students have that dysregulation. Right now we're sharing, so as you heard Jen joking about wanting some, the position back in her building, the position in and of itself has been very effective. So the model that we've rolled out, and we've had it for a few years in a different kind of capacities, but I do support the need for that based on the presentation of our students at this time.
And the grant's running out. It was this,
So the grant we do not get notified until July, so it's one of those last minute scrambles of, I always know what I'd like to do with the money, but I did email them just double checking, nothing's coming out sooner, and they confirmed it wouldn't be confirmed until July.
so
It
you're
is
looking
part
to
of their
hire.
recommendations.
So it's hiring for the position that's currently grant funded,
Correct, it would switch.
We
One
want no
would be,
potential.
yes,
Yeah.
and then the other 2.5.
with the potential of
Correct.
it being grant funded. Got it.
Yes. And then the coordinator of behavioral health, wellness, and counseling. I know Mark had presented this year about coordinator of counseling. This has been something that I've been recommending for a few years. I did encompass the behavioral health and wellness part of it. I do believe not just the guidance department and supervision and evaluation of kind of streamlining that 7 through 12, but also the social emotional supports pre-K to 22, and then really being able to establish kind of care and coordination of supports in the community-based programs with families, providing that training, and just having somebody there to support all of our mental health staff from pre-K to 22.
So you all did, we did propose this last year as it being partially grant funded and partially funded during the under the general fund. So half of it is in our current budget, the other half is on that grant that Jess was talking about that we don't know if it would exist, which is why we didn't bring somebody on staff in late October when we unfroze the budget, because we have no assurance that it would be funded for the following year.
And then just intervention supports, I fully support the request for kindergarten paraprofessionals, really addressing those readiness skills, the diverse needs of our students coming into kindergarten that has changed over the years. That math interventionalist position that you've heard a lot of us talk about, being able to provide more targeted intervention and not sharing that one staff. We certainly appreciate, as Erin mentioned, starting small. We started with our one math interventionalist, but adding those two would allow each of the elementary schools to have a math interventionalist just as they do a reading specialist. And I am under 1 million, just like Mary
And there's some
Beth, but-
overlap with Mary Beth's, right?
Yes.
So,
Right, and elementaries, yes. Questions?
Katrina?
Oh, my next steps, I forgot. Oops, sorry, next steps.
So,
Just obviously, as we continue to grow our department, you'll see this as part of the strategic plan kind of focus area when we get to that next meeting. Further developing our multi-tiered systems of support. Some of that is staff dependent, but really streamlining those processes across the district. Mary Beth mentioned a little bit about best practices for reading in those upper grades. If we think about the reading rope, that phonics and phonemic awareness, we've done a lot of work on that, both with professional development and that UFly Integrity programs. Our special ed staff is really looking for more professional development on data collection and some of those other parts of the reading rope. So fluency, accuracy, rate, comprehension, which really happens, not that it doesn't happen pre-K to 2, but in those upper level grades at the elementary level and into middle school. Further developing that coaching model, as I mentioned, that one RBT position has done a great job. What we have, but we'd like to further develop that, obviously pending staffing. Still rooting for that social emotional, substantially separate program at the elementary level and growing that as we can to expand that.
Well, we have funded that.
We
right?
have.
It's just a
yeah,
matter
it's
of
just
making
filling.
it
Yeah,
happen.
it's in the budget for 26, it's in,
Yeah.
it's better for 27.
Yep.
Yeah, so question around the multi-tiered system of support. What positions would help with that, the development of that program?
Sure. So in the social emotional realm, it's the RBTs really to be able to do that extra level of support for students more individualized. And then staffing wise for academic would be those math interventionalists. We have done wonders in reading and have 3 great reading specialists. And our new math interventionalist has done a great job. But again, in order to do that kind of tiered levels of support and being able to coach teachers to provide those interventions in the classroom as well, more staffing is needed.
Mm-hmm. And with the reading intervention, have you seen a change in like student behavior in terms of engagement with class when you've had those interventions in place for students that might be struggling?
Yeah, so I think it helps with engagement and self-confidence. So the more students are able to access and feel more confident, especially if they can do it in a small group setting, to be able to then generalize it in the larger group setting.
Awesome. Great. And one of the things in terms of the social emotional program, one of the things that I advocated at the State House for was potential supplemental funding, because there is discussion of potential more money. So maybe I can, I'm sure I can go back through what the positions are, but kind of give an overview of the program to our senator. They asked if we could send that along because they were interested in seeing if there could be a way to fund.
Yep.
No promise of funding, but could be something. That's it.
Else?
I think I asked all my questions during it.
Sue?
So I'm going to ask a very similar question about the funding. Like, there's so many asks here. Like, if you had to pick between.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just curious. Well, I heard so much about the paraprofessionals in the kindergarten classrooms, which I feel like are really needed, you know, because the teachers, like, I mean, would that be more of a priority, or would it be more the math interventionist and the RBT? Like, what do you think would be?
So we all go in a room and we hash it out, right?
I'm sure you do, but I'm
match.
just curious what she thinks.
You're like a week ahead of us.
So, yeah,
2
so.
weeks. We'll be presenting that on April 14th.
I do believe the interventionalists, whether that's the math or the RBTs, would be my priority if I had to pick. Obviously, special education, the requirements are, for me, a need, but I think that's where I would, if I got to pick.
Okay.
So again, didn't answer your question with one.
Yep.
Selected
no,
most
but-
of them.
Yeah. That's helpful to know. That's
Correct
all.
answer.
Thank you so much.
Katrina?
Oh, no, thank you.
I just want to point out to the people at home the tremendous amount of money that we're saving by having the lights dim every 6 minutes and having to walk around to turn them on. Nobody who's not here can appreciate the fact that
Yeah.
that is what's happening here.
We have
You see us look up, we roll our eyes, it gets brighter, it gets darker.
We're laughing, that's why.
Yes.
Is there some bandwidth to do fees?
Yes,
Okay.
The clicker, just.
we already did it.
So the budget subcommittee met a couple weeks ago at this point to look over our fees, what we're currently charging, what some of our surrounding communities are charging. And then, yep.
Excuse me just a second. Is it okay if we dismiss our
Of
student
course,
rep? He
Joe.
has a lot
Is
going
it
on.
safe for you to get to your
Oh,
car?
no. An umbrella or something?
I have my gun. so-
Okay. Oh my God. It is senior assassin at Pembroke
My
Massachusetts.
water gun.
Oh, senior assassin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a water gun.
Wow, that's interesting
Senior
joke.
assassin.
Senior assassin. And what is the prize money at this point?
It's like 1,100.
Right, so definitely worth trying to have that.
Right
Yes,
there.
yes.
Wow.
All right, if something happens in the parking lot, let us know, because you're supposed to be safe while you're here.
Okay.
Doesn't exactly a dollar amount you want to hear when
No.
you're talking fees.
No, no, no.
But,
So we met a couple weeks ago to kind of look over where we were at with our fees, where our surrounding communities were, and to see if there was any desire to make any recommendations to the committee as far as raising fees. So the first fee is our transportation fee. We did go up on our transportation fee last year. The current fee is $300 for an individual student with a family cap of $500. We do have an early pay discount of $30 for both the family cap and the individual. You can see we're pretty much in line with where everybody around us is. One thing that I did point out when we met at Budget Subcommittee is prior to this year, there were several towns that I used to list as being free, but you can see Carver is the only one that near us that is currently free. Both Marshfield and Hingham have instituted a fee for the 25-26 school year. I think just showing that the pressures that we're feeling here are similar to those of our neighbors. Budget Subcommittee is not recommending an increase in the transportation fee. Again, the transportation fee raises about $140,000. It costs us just under $2 million to transport the students on yellow school buses, so it is in no way, shape, or form the funding mechanism for school transportation. Athletics, one of my favorite to talk about.
do we want to take it one at a time? What do you want?
They're not recommending an increase, so you don't have to.
Okay.
We could just, I mean, we can just quickly, I mean, I don't know if people want to look at them individually, I'm fine just saying that we.
So they did an increase, they're not recommending an increase for anything. Athletics, we went up on last year, you can see kind of where we are with that. Facilities is a required increase just under the custodial overtime. That's on the next slide. So the custodial overtime is associated with rentals of our properties on the weekends, and so the dollar amount there is a function of the base wages for our custodial staff.
Quick question, do
Yep.
we suffer less renting of the buildings based on the community center being added? Would that make
No,
sense?
so the spaces in our buildings that are the most sought after are our gyms and our fields. The addition of the gym at the community center, it has not really changed the need. We've actually been able to use it a little bit with some of our sub-varsity level basketball teams, whether it's freshman or JV. But we are still, our gyms are pretty much in use every night, whether it's our youth sports or I think Wednesdays is men's over 30 basketball in there. There's always people there. So we have not seen a decline in revenue from that.
Outstanding.
We talked a little bit, co-curricular is something that you all talked extensively about last year. We're not recommending any increases, just leaving it the same as it was. We talked a little bit about technology and the concept of a technology fee. Gave a little bit of information about what it looked like in other communities, what revenue could look like for us if we were to do something with that. But I think the overall sentiment of the conversation is that raising fees at a time where there's override conversations associated with funding schools, whether it's vocational or not, I just don't think is necessarily a good use of your time, knowing, and we've been doing this for several years, that raising fees increases our revenue offset minimally. So, we agonize over increasing an athletic fee $25 or a transportation fee $30 to raise $20,000. And there have been years where every $20,000 really and truly mattered. And it still does, but we're not in a place where we're discussing sweeping reduction. So at this point, Budget Subcommittee is not recommending any changes to the current fee structure. With that being said, after we give you your admin recommended budget on April 14th, if you feel differently about trying to find another way to fund a priority that we haven't funded, you absolutely can come back to fees if you choose to do that. But
One thought on fees is just thinking about just making sure, I know in the past, like, we hadn't raised fees and then it was a large jump. So just thinking about knowing that we're not raising them this year, there is a good potential we're going to raise them next year. Obviously, I'm not the whole committee as Katrina Delaney, but just so families can keep that in mind, like, we are not raising them this year, it sounds like, at this time.
No, and I think a lot of that is a function of what happens in May with the election as far as the override for vocational. There is some
Right.
capacity in those first few years with the operational override for the schools for that piece of it. There's also been some conversation both at the select board meeting and the advisory meeting about potential new growth in the town and the funding trend for the town being in the upward direction. So it's possible that next year we may not be looking to raise fees either for many reasons.
Well, that's good to know.
See how fast that was? Look at that.
Good. Yep.
Love that. Next on my report is consideration for second read and approval of the 26-27 school year calendar. So what you have in front of you, I think the one suggestion from the last time was that we add the pre-K times down the bottom, which we did. There was a typo on the first version. The open houses that are scheduled for 9/1 at all of the schools originally said 1:30 to 3:30. They are 1:30 to 3. It's a 90-minute window of time. I did receive feedback from one parent in regards to what does it look like if you have kids in multiple buildings. Our buildings are close enough together that you could get to more than one of them. It's truly a meet and greet. You're coming in, you're meeting the teacher, you're seeing kind of where your chair is, which really feels almost like an elementary concept or a freshman in high school walking the building. So there's definitely enough time to get through, even if you have a middle school, elementary, and high school student, to spend 15 minutes in each of the buildings over that period of time. If for some reason your family is pulled in a million different directions, we offer building tours all of the time, and happy to walk kids and families through those spaces outside of that day if needed. I think that was the only suggestion, was the adding the times.
This is a roll call vote or just a general?
Nope, just general.
They all line up, so they're not.
I'm gonna really tell you my feedback someday.
All right, ladies.
On your evaluation that we'll do in the public.
Let's do I get a motion to accept the 2026-2027 calendar?
So moved.
Second. I've got a first, I've got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0, Natalie.
You good? You see anything?
No,
You don't like
just
the
that, just that part.
Natalie's got the feedback. The times need to move over a tiny bit.
Just the bottom two, the middle.
The last thing under my report is consideration for approval and updated 25-26 admin salary grid. So you all approved the administrative salary grid back in July, I believe, which included a 2.5% increase for administrators. I am asking that you go back and approve the same increase for administrators that was approved as part of the teacher's contract. Reason being, we are, as Mary Beth alluded to in her teaching and learning presentation, always looking to build a bench. It is very difficult to build an administrative bench when a step 11 teacher makes just as much as an elementary or middle school assistant principal. The same with when we're looking for some of our real curriculum leaders in the district to step up and be a content supervisor. It doesn't really make much sense to move to a 12-month position to make zero more than you were making in a 10-month position. So when you look back at the increases in the admin grid for the past 7 to 10 years, it is always in line with what the teachers are getting, unless there's some sort of market readjustment, which there was, I think, 5 years ago. We did a readjustment on assistant principal.
Do you have an idea of like what the total cost is? For
Yeah,
that?
so an additional 1% on this grid is going to cost you just under $14,000.
Oh, okay.
So they already got their 2.5 in July, so it's, the 1% is just under 14,000.
Okay.
I'll take a motion to accept the salary grid as shown.
So moved.
Second.
I got a first, I got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0, Natalie.
As far as subcommittees, as I said, Budget Subcommittee met and discussed the fees. We will meet again with a draft of the admin recommended budget prior to the 14th. At the request of the committee, I did reach out to both advisory and the select board to invite them to that joint meeting. Linda Peterson has confirmed that advisory discussed it at their meeting last week, and they're all on board. Tracy also confirmed that it was shared with the select board and that she has it on her calendar.
And what
So-
was,
The 28th, and with a 7 o'clock start time, that works for,
April 28th, correct?
yes.
Make sure I got that corrected here.
No, not over vacation, we're not meeting on the 21st.
That's a 7 o'clock start. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And that'll be here? Or
That'll be
it'll
here, yep, with the giant table.
Sounds good.
Vocational Planning, Regional Planning Committee, as has been advertised, we will be doing an information session here next Tuesday. That will start at 5:30 prior to your regularly scheduled meeting, which I'm going to post for 6:15, just to give a little bit of window in case there's a whole host of people with questions. That presentation obviously will be recorded by Local Scene, so it can play ad nauseum on whatever channels it plays on. But just an opportunity for folks to ask questions. We will have the updated information that we anecdotally shared at the select board meeting 2 weeks ago, I think, at this point, in regards to what the debt service looks like for the operational override as well as for the debt exclusion. Talk a little bit just about where they are with the project. Tom Hickey is willing to join us that evening so he can answer questions about the building project itself and how it has been going in the communities where he has been sharing our potential membership. So, Policy Subcommittee is meeting tomorrow. We were so fortunate to have undergone an audit of food services back in January, beginning of February. We have some of their feedback, and there's a couple of adjustments that they're looking for some of our food service policies. So we'll be tackling those hopefully tomorrow.
Okay. All right, anything else? Future meeting dates, so we have 4/7, 4/14, and 4/28 will be at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
Does that sound
Just
good, folks?
Quick overview, 4/7, we're going to start with vocational, then strategic plan. Teaching Learning Alliance will be here to kind of share with you the strategic, I'll be sharing with you, with the support of Teaching Learning Alliance, the strategic plan for your feedback so that we can keep that process going. It sounds like we're going to have another potential conversation regarding the MIA communication. 4/14, the only item on the agenda for that evening is the admin recommended budget.
And the state reps.
And obviously,
Yep.
the goal was to have them here to hear that.
Yep.
And then on 4/28, we will have our joint
So we have
meeting.
visitors for all 3 meetings.
Yes.
Yeah. They did say if anyone has a specific question or topic you'd like to address, either let me know or just contact Representative Lenatra or Representative Sweezy and say, do you have any information on House Bill, 1234, something? They just don't want to get asked a question they may not be prepared
Yeah.
for. And I said, I certainly understand that.
Understandable. Quick question, in a similar vein as that, for the next meeting, if anybody has a proposal, just so we all feel prepared to discuss and make a decision, can we get it in advance in terms of the
The MIA?
discussion for MIA?
Yeah, I can email Erin, my suggestions with like a potential draft letter, or that you could look over and.
Sure, that'd be helpful. I just want to make sure I feel prepared in the moment to make a decision
Yeah,
versus
absolutely.
delaying it anymore.
Sure, but is the agenda item a discussion of sending a communication or a discussion of a draft communication?
I think a discussion of sending it.
Sending, okay.
I don't think we would decide on the language necessarily.
Got it. Just want to make sure I posted it appropriately.
Thank you.
Any old business, new business, anything to bring up? I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That's a wrap, folks. Thank you to the man behind the controls, to our studio audience and light fixture. Thank you, sir. Have a good night, folks.